Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host, Bryan. We're going to wrap up today with a special selection, which is where one of you tell me exactly what it is I need to check out. Today's special selection comes at us from David. Martyr is a French-Canadian band that was active from 94 to 2012 and rejoined later in 2023. I'm a big fan of them. The lead singer-guitarist is Dan Mongren, who is also the guitarist for Voivod. Daniel's brother, Francois, is the bassist for Martyr. He plays a 6-string bass fingerstyle, but he also has a metal ring that he sometimes uses to get a picked tone on some of the parts. Martin is the second guitarist, and Patrice is their drummer. So, let's dive into this. I have no idea what kind of music we are in store for. It's got kind of a metal vibe going on with this album art. I don't know. Let's kick it, see what's going on with the track Lost in Sanity. Those are some wild intervals. Okay. Well, that's kind of neat. It's the one thing that I think I finally found connected in some way. That's the second time. Yeah, a small, brief use of strings as a transition, and then getting rid of them completely. This is the opening, right? Yeah. That's a fun little rhythm there.
For he is no more than they, to him becoming their prey, even if he so aspires.
whole section just being quarter notes cracks me up though. I don't know.
It's all riddled with scars, with the mean of mortuaries, to the better pride of tuberculosis. Hating the hatred, hateful of hatred, reflecting in ecstasy through the veil of mediocrity. Perched above so high, aerial to impress, self-serving and victorious, nothing for praise.
Yeah, as wild as that section is 4/4. I only counted out a few bars the first time we hit it, but I counted every bar there. Definitely 4/4. Yeah, this is some no frills death metal. Well, I guess no frills is a bit incorrect. There are some frills, very minimal frills. Most of what's going on here is straightforward, rule of cool metal. There's just no way around it. The vocals are just aggressive and in your face. The guitar riffs are constantly changing, but aggressive and in your face. The bass riffs are pretty slick, actually. I dug what was being played there. Lots of movement, lots of new ideas running counter to the guitars. The drums, constantly in your face. We do have the strings that show up in two places. A combined 4 bars, maybe tops. It's not a lot. But it does present a little bit of these shifts towards a non-metal feeling. Those are the frills. 4 bars of frills within a 5-minute song or something. It's not a lot. It's mostly straightforward metal, constantly in your face, very aggressive, and that aggression isn't just the intensity of the music. It isn't just how often and how fast the rhythms are, or the fact that we have those 16th note bass kicks in there, or the yelling and growling. It's also harmonic. I mentioned at the very beginning that the interval between the two guitars, the dyad that they were playing, the 2-note chord, it was interesting. It's very tense. It's not necessarily stable. I don't know if I would necessarily call it dissonant. We have definitely heard harmonies that are more abrasive to the ear. But it's not a stable dyad either. We're not talking about a third. We're not talking about a fifth. I don't know what it is. And there's a lot of space between them too. So I think that the 2 notes are actually in 2 different octaves, which creates this wide gap. It creates a vastness to it, but then we're also working with an unstable interval too, which is going to create some tension in the chord itself. And so it feels vast but tense, and that's just not something you hear too often. I find it creates an interesting texture throughout this track. We hear it so often, not just one specific interval, but this concept behind how they're building their chords. It's all over the place. It creates something that feels unknowing. Maybe unknown is the better word for it. It feels sort of alien in ways, but not in the sci-fi way. There's definitely space rock, space prog, that kind of area creates very sci-fi-ish sounds with their chords. No, this just feels foreign. It feels alien. The entire song feels like it doesn't want me to. Well, personally, I feel like it doesn't want me to enjoy it. But I think probably what they're aiming for is it doesn't want me to fully understand it. It wants to have a lot of edge to it in a unique way. And so that's what I kind of feel like listening to a lot of the harmonic ideas in here. Pretty much any time that we have two guitar lines going on that aren't playing the exact same thing, that's how I feel about it. They're pretty consistent with that. But it's also aggressive in just a flurry of sounds. I feel like we only ever get to hear a guitar riff or a drum pattern for, I don't know, two repetitions maybe, the first time it's presented and then the repeat of it, and then they're moving on to something else. Sometimes they'll come back to that and they'll bounce back and forth between these two ideas. Other times it feels like a linear journey, just constantly bouncing to new ideas. The drummer, I think, is the most prolific on this idea. The drummer just refuses to sit in one place. They'll play a pattern, repeat it once, and then be like, I'm done with that, let's move on to something else. Sometimes it is building upon that, such as in the quarter note section, which I think is the chorus, possibly. The guitars are just kind of hitting these awkward dyads on the beat every time. The drums start out accenting the beat as well before throwing eighth notes on top of that and then 16th notes, which is, uh, well, if quarter notes are one hit per beat, eighth notes are two hits per beat, and 16th notes are four hits per beat. We're basically subdividing the beat up. And it's a constant progression of sound in that sense, constantly moving to new ideas, especially since the quarter note idea was more focused on snare and cymbal. And then as we begin to subdivide it into smaller notes, we end up bringing the bass kick in for more of it until we're just getting that constant 16th note bass kick stuff. It's an evolution of an idea while also changing the sonic properties of the drum kit, the drum part across the evolution. The guitars, though, man, they too just like to jump around between a lot of ideas. It's difficult to sit in one place and enjoy anything on this track because the minute that you start to enjoy it, it's gone. The only part I think that sticks around for a lengthy amount of time is that awkward phrased one that we saw towards the end when I was like, yes, that was 4/4. They play around with groupings of notes. Because if we're working in 4/4 and we do a typical 4-bar phrase where there's 4 beats in each bar, that's 16 beats. You can subdivide that evenly in a lot of ways. 2 groups of 8, 4 groups of 4, 8 groups of 2. A lot of ways to keep things symmetrical, though, and working within even numbers, right? But you can also do it in so many other ways. You could do a couple of groups of 3, then a couple groups of 2, and then a group of 4, and then a group of 3, and then add that up and figure out what the remainder is, and then that's your last group, and then you start that over. And it's just like this very disjointed whiplash of moving between these different phrases, because the beginning of each phrase, generally speaking, is going to be an accent. It's going to be a note that's just a little bit louder or a little bit more aggressive than the rest of them to create a bit of a pulse, a rhythm throughout it. When you have a rhythm that's symmetrical, say you're working with groups of 2 beats. So in this 16 beat phrase, you have 8 groups of 2. It just means that every other beat you're going to have an accent. It's going to create something symmetrical, something reliable. You know that every 2 beats you're going to get an accented hit. With this, you don't. It's difficult to follow along with. It's what makes it feel so disjointed. It's what made me question the time signature of it the first time through. And honestly, I didn't even pick up on it. I counted a few bars in 4. I was like, okay, that's probably what we're in, but I didn't get the whole thing. When it came back around, I was like, okay, lock in. What time signature is this? It's still 4/4. It's just awkwardly phrased. And it creates something that feels very disjointed and abrasive rhythmically. We also have the harmony here, like I'd mentioned, it also is rather abrasive. It's just a generally antagonistic part of the song for me. It's I think the key moment of the track that informs me that I am not the target audience of this. Um, but yeah, that abrasiveness. Even, talking about jumping around between ideas, look at the vocals, man. You're lucky to get 2 full sentences in a single vocal style before the vocalist jumps to something else. They have a low growl, they have a higher harsh, maybe. They have like a yell, like a compressed yell. And they just sort of jump around between all this. You can't really stick to anything. The song is just in constant flux. So many moving parts, and at any time, you can get any combination of all of these moving parts, and it creates something that just feels like it's never static in any way. I'm sure once you listen to it a couple of times, patterns start to rise up. You can start to get a feel for it, build out a little map for yourself while you're listening, and it begins to make more sense. But I mean, my first time in here, I felt like I was in a pool, but like multiple whirlpools in this pool, and so like I'm trying to get from one end to the other, and it's just like hazard after hazard after hazard, and they crop up at random times too. It looks like I'm safe, and then now this part of the pool's draining down. So I gotta avoid that. Like it just feels like I'm lost, and there's traps, and I have no idea what I'm doing, and I don't want to be here anyways. How did I get here? That's what this song makes me feel. Now, I don't want that to come across as that I didn't enjoy the song. There's definitely a lot of cool stuff in it. There's some drum parts that had my brain ticking. I like that. You get me thinking about stuff, I'm already going to enjoy it. There's also a very rule of cool element going on here. Aside from their unique harmonic ideas, I'd say that a majority of this fits right inside of the death metal sonic library. There's nothing in here that I think really deviates too far from that. It's a bit progressive in its writing. It's a bit progressive, I suppose, in a sense. Experimental, it might be the word, in its harmony. But as far as individual riffs go, just listening to a single guitar, in a specific part of the track. Nah, dude, that's just straightforward, rule of cool death metal riff writing. And I mean, it sounds great almost all the time. There's a couple of riffs I'm like, ooh, that's a little rough for me, a little disjointed, but for the most part, I mean, this is just a riff central song. If you like riffs, you're gonna like this band, I think, especially if this is indicative of their writing style. For such a short song, there was probably 7, 8 guitar riffs in here, maybe more. Might have lost track. And most of them, well, I'd say all of them are solid. Most of them are going to work for your general audience. I think getting past the harmony might, if there is an issue, getting past the harmony where the two guitars are playing different notes that's going to be the only hurdle because the riffs themselves in isolation are solid. The bass has fantastic presence on this too. I love listening to those bass licks. Very cool stuff. And the vocals generally they're fine. It's not necessarily a vocal style I would go out of my way to look for, but I'd have a problem with it either. Even the low growls, which were probably the lowest point for me, pun intended, I suppose. They were fine in context because they were contrasted with so many other different styles of vocals that it never really got to a point where it grated on me. Remember, one of my biggest problems with low growls and sort of harsh vocals in general is that they can sort of become monotonous, where the vocalist just has this one tone that they use all the time. And this vocalist, each of their different styles is locked into a single one, but because they jump between their styles so frequently, it doesn't really have a chance to become monotonous, become that one note style of sound. And so it's dynamic enough for me, I suppose, is the what I'm getting at there. Aside from that, what is this song doing? What is it saying? I don't know, man. This comes back to my relationship with straightforward metal is that I don't really have a strong read on it. I'm a lot better at getting emotional information from more atmospheric styles of metal, such as progressive metal or even post metal, stuff that really aims to create a unique emotional palette with their music. When it comes to death metal, pretty much all the songs, especially in this more straightforward death metal style, they just come off as harsh and abrasive, a level of angstiness to them, and that's what this song feels like to me. It's just loud and angry. That's probably not what they're going for emotionally. That's probably just the sound of the music they want to make, but that's the only thing that I really get out of music like this. So, I don't really have any way of crafting a narrative to this other than just the constant metamorphosis and unique harmonic elements feeling antagonistic to me, which just adds on to this level of feeling lost and angry and being in a, I don't know, an angsty whirlwind. I suppose that would be my feeling throughout this track. With that said, let me dive into some lyrics, see what they're singing about, and maybe the angsty feeling matches perfectly with what they're going for in the lyrics. I'm very lost with these lyrics though. A lot of them seem to say a lot of the same things. There's a water ship kind of thing going on here. It talks about restless winds and troubled waters. Um, but a lot of what it says kind of, I get the gist that many of these stanzas are about this person being surrounded by people who he is different than but perceives himself to be similar to as they work together to do something. And I think that that's kind of where my confusion is because that's like super vague. So it says that there is a mantle of prophecy here. That's what the whole first stanza indicates, that there's a prophecy at hand. After that, it just says battling sailless windmills twice. And then it says peons are his peers, as he to they may appear the paragon of trickery under the altar of ignominy. Battling sailless windmills. What is a sailless windmill? I mean, would that be a windmill that doesn't have anything that would cause wind to turn it? Like just sticks? like a cross of sticks? No way for the wind to really turn them around? We're battling sailless. We're battling things that have no purpose. I don't know. That phrase is so wild. And it kind of fits in this idea of lost in sanity. It is a play on words, of course. It sounds like lost in sanity, but we actually have lost in sanity, being lost in being sane. This concept of bringing sanity and insanity into question. We actually see in the middle of the track there's a quote. It says, "Sanity may be madness, but maddest of all is to see life as it is and not as it should be." So we have some sort of uprising of the lower class. He says that the people I surround myself are peons. And this line says that they see life as it should be. So I assume that the prophecy is to make life better for the people at the lowest. There's a repeated phrase in here. It says, hating the hatred, hateful of hatred, reflecting an eye to see through the veil of mediocrity. I don't know. Hating the hated, hateful of hatred. I have no idea. Right before the solo, a silver tongue wagging to pretentious visionary spits the tangent with sermons of perfidy, so now forked, swallowed and choked, retched back for a new soliloquy. Part of me thinks it's the language, but it's not like I don't know these words. They're just not forming together into anything that makes any sense to me. It sounds great. I love the interline rhyming. I love the use of repeated uh what is it? Syllables in order to craft a nice ebb and flow through these, which is interesting. I didn't pick up on any of this um in the song itself. Even if I don't listen to the words themselves, I do hear the syllables generally. I'm going to pick up on really cool rhyme schemes and stuff like that. I didn't hear any of that in here. There's a neat fluidity to the poetry that didn't translate into the delivery. It talks about him having a face with a polished mask, but there's cracks in the glass that reflect back through the veil of mediocrity. So is this supposed to show that the person who our narrator is about, sorry, the person who the song is about, our character who surrounds himself with peons, as he said at the beginning, that he isn't as perfect as he made seem, but up to this point, I didn't really think he had positioned himself as someone perfect either. I don't know, man. At the very end, though, it says, perched above so high, air alone to impress, self serving and vainglorious, waiting for praise. This seems to push against the idea of mediocrity. It also seems to push against the idea of this group of people being a whole who will work together, to pointing towards just this single person being at the top, which lines up with prophecies. Usually, prophecies are about a single person. I don't know. I'm so lost on this. It. I was reading these lyrics and I was just like, what am I going to do here? None of this makes any sense to me. If you have any insight into that, please let me know. I'd love to have a little bit better understanding of what the song is about lyrically, but at this point, these are my thoughts on Martyr's Lost in Sanity. Let me know what you thought of it. If there's anything that stood out to you, anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on, if you have your own interpretation, opinion, thoughts about this, please put all of that down in the comments section. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. Takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today, but I'll be back tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.